I have sent Congress a detailed funding request laying out exactly how we will eliminate these threats to protect our homeland and complete the largest deportation operation in American history.
President Trump was elected in 2024 in part because of his strong stance on immigration, keeping out those who try to enter the country illegally and deporting those who have already come in outside the rules. Whether one agrees with his deportation policy or not, it is happening on an historic scale, which raises the question of how best to do it. There's a lot of money involved.
Oh, this is big money at a high rate of return.
Most of the money is going to private companies who run the detention facilities.
What DHS does is it contracts with other entities, sometimes counties, and most often private companies, and those companies run the facilities instead.
There is nothing new about private detention. The first modern federal contract dates to the mid-1980s under President Ronald Reagan. Corrections Corporation of America, today CoreCivic, helped pioneer the model. Damon Heininger, a former correctional officer, now leads CoreCivic, one of the largest private prison and detention operators in America.
Our very first contract was with then INS, now Immigration Customs Enforcement, but the value proposition is to bring private sector innovation, being very nimble, being very flexible, provide high quality solutions and outcomes at a very low cost to government.
Along with the ramp-up in immigration enforcement has come more demand for CoreCivic's services. Not even a year into its second term, the Trump administration says it has deported more than 400,000 people, which comes at a big cost for the government. Earlier this year, Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill, authorizing roughly $170 billion for immigration and border operations, with $45 billion designated just for detention capacity expansion.
We need detention facilities. We need beds to put them in place so that they can have their due process before they return home.
Some 60,000 people are currently detained, with nearly 90% of them in private facilities owned or operated by companies like CoreCivic or Geo Group, its main competitor, and that's helping drive profits. According to CoreCivic's second quarter earnings figures, ICE contracts account for a majority of its revenue.
We don't get involved in policy, but obviously there has been a lot of discussion, leading up to the campaign and the election last year and this year about, getting stronger enforcement on the southwest border and also doing a fair amount of interior enforcement with DHS and in turn our customer ICE. We obviously didn't know what the outcome was going to be in the election, but I've always stressed this as CEO to plan well in advance before there is an outcome on our national election, especially like the one we had last year.
Investors moved quickly after the 2024 election. CoreCivic's stock jumped before President Trump was even sworn in, as Wall Street priced in tighter immigration enforcement and more detention spending. The explosion in ICE detentions may have been good for the business of companies like CoreCivic, but it's come with a fair amount of scrutiny and criticism. Margot Schlanger, a University of Michigan law professor, previously served in the Department of Homeland Security in the Obama administration, overseeing civil rights and liberties of detainees.
There is a range of conditions. Some of the detention facilities are better than others, and some of them are more stressed than others and are less good at dealing with the stress of high populations or particularly needy populations.
Why is it that the federal government essentially delegates this or contracts it out to private companies?
Congress made a decision a while back that it didn't want to set up the Department of Homeland Security to run a large system of detention and run it itself. So the Federal Bureau of Prisons has correctional officers who run facilities. ICE does not. ICE does not have the kinds of people who just day in, day out run the facilities. So that's been its general approach since the founding of the department in 2003.
CoreCivic says that there are checks and balances in place to try to ensure that detainees are being treated humanely.
Really, since day one, we wanted to meet all national standards within our facility. So American Correctional Association, which has been around since 1870, They set national standards on how facilities are designed, how big are day rooms, how big are cells, how big are the food service area, medical, maintenance, etc.
Do those apply to ongoing treatment while people are in your custody?
They do, yes. So they'll have general standards. They'll come in, they'll calibrate the review based on that population. So again, if they're coming, if we've got auditors coming in from the ACA to do a review at a facility for an ICE, and those standards have, again, kind of evolved over time, not just the standards from ACA, but also from our partners.
But this is important, I'm not sure everyone knows about this. There are independent auditors from ACA that come in and monitor what you're doing, apart from DHS or ICE or anyone else in the government.
Virtually all of our facilities have full-time on-site auditors and monitors. And so these are government employees where we are required by contract to give them space in the facility where they can set up offices and have space to where they can do their, kind of day-to-day review of the operations. But they got unfettered access to the facility 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
We've all seen reports in the press about the mistreatment of detainees. Knowing what you know, how do you respond to that? Is it, number one, the reports are wrong, or number two, it's just not CoreCivic?
The vast majority, I'd say 99% of the stuff that we see in newspapers or speculated in online or on socials is incorrect or false or maybe not incomplete relative to information. We got in our ICE facilities like 1,000 government employees that have unfettered access to our operations. Now, having said that, and I often say this to investors, you have 14,000 employees. Not every single employee is going to make the right decision every single day. And so, that's the case obviously with any large organization.
There's also the question of where all these detention facilities will be located and whether they help or hurt their home communities. One of the largest for-profit sites in the nation is GEO Group's Folkston ICE Processing Center in Georgia. In June, the County Commission approved an expansion from just over 1,100 beds to nearly 3,000. County Administrator Glenn Hull helped shepherd the deal.
The process to expand the GEO facility and the contract with ICE took about 4 months. Overall, the relationship is good, not only from an operating standpoint, but from a revenue standpoint. The GEO Group and the facility contribute about $655,000 to our tax collections, which makes up about 12% of our overall income. That is significant because as we have an outmigration of jobs and industries, we need to fill the gap in rural America. This is where the rubber meets the road.
For Folkston, a city with a population of less than 5,000 people and few job openings, the expansion provides both tax revenues and hiring opportunities.
The job count from the GEO facility is 632. About 551 of those are in Georgia. In Folkston specifically, 198 jobs.
There's been a long-standing debate over whether jails and prisons and the expansion of jails and prisons, and that's what these are. These are basically facilities that are like jails and prisons. Whether those expansions actually help communities. I think the best evidence is that long-term it does not, but there's definitely some short-term influx of money.
Charlton County has been through many iterations. Back when US 1 was a vibrant corridor through here before the interstates in the early 70s, we had a mill here in Folkston. Some time ago, that mill closed and all of those jobs went away. When you have an economy that's based on kind of blue-collar work and those jobs go away, so do the people, so does the tax revenue. I think it's important to understand that these serve as lifelines on ground zero. Without a detention facility, we wouldn't be surviving as a county.
It's not a lot to offer here when it comes to jobs per se, and if there are, they're on a lower scale.
Despite the possible economic benefits of hosting a detention center, not everyone there is happy about having one in town. Local pastor Antoine Nixon was born and raised in Folkston and opposed the expansion.
My mindset was, we failed again. I think it's been a growing concern here for the citizens, especially as of late, with some of the things that our commissioners have been okay with. I'm not proud to say we have a prison here. There's no kids who are gonna graduate who are gonna say, I wanna graduate and go work at the prison. I think we ought to start providing better outcomes and start looking at what's better for our children's future. When you look at our community, why is it here? Why did they choose Folkestone? You're not going to go in those maybe educated areas, people who are really standing up against things like that. You're not going to bring that into those areas. I think Folkestone sits as a prime example and a prime place, as many other places do, where you can go in and you can dangle the golden apple in front of people, and you can just make them these promises that ultimately end up being nothing. And then once they suck you dry, they move on and find other places. It's like leeches. You know, once they have all they want to get from you, then you're left to fend for yourselves. And so I'm not happy about that.
Detention and deportation of those who have entered the United States unlawfully remains as controversial as ever, if not more so. And although there are those who, like Reverend Nixon, think it simply can't be justified no matter what the benefit, there are also those who believe this new business of detention can be a lifeline for their community.
What I would say is, let's have real conversations with people that live in rural America, as opposed to having academic arguments about what detention facility is and what it is not. It's one thing to have a human rights conversation. It's a completely another one to have an economic development conversation.
And then there are those who are running a legal and profitable business and trying to do it the best way they can.
I think the general view is, from a policy perspective, we've done a good job. We're a very important part of the solution for these jurisdictions. And I think from an investor perspective, I think the risk that maybe they assigned for our business in the past maybe is not as great.
In the end, there is no simple answer to the question of how the markets can price the freedom of individuals, or whether they can. But until a better solution comes along, all we can do is our best.